water spirits, sprites, and nymphs. Water is the creative element of life. Many tales and myths exist about how life came forth from spiritual waters. It has long been a symbol of the womb and a symbol of creation. In Babylonian cosmology, the gods, mothered by Tiamat, were brought forth from the waters of life. In Scandinavian lore, the sea goddess, Ran, and her male counterpart, Adir, had 9 giant daughters, the waves. Water is both creative and destructive, as a source of life and a source of death. From the amniotic fluids of the prenatal experience to the nourishment it provides throughout life, it is essential to our existence. It is a primary element within the human body, coursing through our veins. On the other hand, death is often described as a crossing of the waters. In Greek mythology, the underworld is only reached by crossing the river Styx. Many of the world's myths attest to the destructive aspect of water, symbolized by storms and floods. One such initiation associated with water is baptism. A true ritual baptism in water, though, is not the dedication ceremony we use today. It was an act prepared for in a meticulous manner, so that when finally enacted, it would loosen the etheric web around the physical body and open one to true spiritual insight. Outer sight, insight, outside, all sight. The world could now be seen in its true light. The spiritual forces operating through and around everything in the physical become as clear to sight as those of the physical realm. All waters of life were considered mysterious. The great oceans and seas were older than anyone knew. They always changed, and yet they were always the same. Civilizations would come and go, but the great seas were always there. From the oceans and the great seas, we get life-sustaining foods. And yet, many individuals have lost their lives in its depths. Water was always shifting, with no beginning and no end. In more ancient times, however, the magic of water had no bounds. It could estrange you from that which made you human, or it could bestow wisdom and spiritual sight. It could cure diseases, and it could even restore youth and life to a dead man. In the Arthurian sagas of the Celtic tradition, the Lady of the Lake gave Arthur the sword Excalibur. Water has a life of its own. It is a world in which many fantastic creatures and beings exist. These beings are still found within the water kingdoms, and they are not limited to only the undines. Water sprites, spirits, and nymphs can be found. Nymphs. Mermaids and mermen occasionally reveal themselves. The water fae, or fairies, and those beings often thought of as sea gods and goddesses, are more fact than fiction. Air quoting here. The American Indians believe that the waters of lakes, rivers, and oceans are inhabited by a mysterious people. These are the Water Indians. Wherever there is a natural source of water, the water spirits can be found. Tiny water fae, or fairies, can be seen flowing in the sprays of waterfalls. Water sprites can be seen riding the crests of waves in the oceans or on backs of sea creatures. They can be seen dancing on the surface of the bay and shore waters. Mermaids can occasionally Mermaids can occasionally be seen bobbing on the surface of the ocean. The water fae, or fairies, of streams and lakes are not as numerous as those of the great oceans and rivers, but they can still be found. In Germany, the sprites of lakes and streams are called nixies, and stories are still surfacing of human encounters with them. Freshwater ponds are often a wonderful place to discover water fairies, or fae. There are qualities that are universally attributed to most water spirits and fairies, or fae. Number 1, beauty is their keynote. This beauty is often reflected through feminine forms. This does not mean that there were no male water spirits, as there are mermen and such. Water, though, is so universally and archetypically feminine, that this may be the most ideal or easiest form for them to appear as women. Feminine might be a little easier to manifest. Number 2, they communicate through our emotions. 3, they are generally sweet and gentle. There have been many stories of beautiful water nymphs and mermaids who seduce and lead men to their doom and death, i.e., the sirens of ancient Greece with their haunting songs to the sailors. Although many of these tales are superstitious, often they are symbolic of the change occurring within the mind and consciousness of one who encounters such a wondrous realm. The person is never the same again, and to many it may seem as if they have lost their souls or died. Such accounts may reflect that for the first time in a person's life, they caught a true glimpse of their souls. There are so many psychological and spiritual interpretations for these associations with doom and death. Number 4, a fluidness is very characteristic of most, as water spirits can present themselves in the most enticing, seductive, and appealing forms. They can also take the form of sea creatures, i.e. seals, dolphins, turtles, etc. Many shore creatures share their magic and serve as a bridge to humans. Turtles, lizards, frogs, etc. Land-walking, four-legged or winged or scaly creatures. Number 5. Water fairies, or fae, are generally and genuinely found. Pardon me here. They are genuinely fond of humans. Fancy that. Although they are hesitant to reveal themselves. I'm going to interject. It is such a blessing to see. Some of these elementals and fairies are kind of spooky. And that they don't reveal themselves because they are also afraid of our reactions to the way that they look. Little orbs of light. I've seen many, I call them fae, different colors out here, and they're just little tiny blue, white, red orbs, very small, smaller than the size of your palm. Depending on size, doesn't matter, just small little orbs of light. Anyways, I'll continue reading. So, 6. They have a special love of flowers and plants. An ideal way to invite their presence is by gently tossing flower blossoms onto the surface of a pond, stream, or other water source. If you have access to a freshwater pond, go to it some morning at dawn or dusk, when there is no breeze. Toss the flower blossoms out a few feet from the shore and watch. Within a few minutes, the water will begin to ripple around the blossoms as the water sprites gather. Placing bouquets at the edge of a stream or pond can draw a water nymph or even the guardian of the waters into sight. They belong, number 7, they belong to or are generally confined to their water source. They do have some freedom and can leave it for varying lengths of time, but they almost always stay very close to their home waters. 8. They have a love for music, and they are often very beautiful singers. Number 9. They can bestow magical gifts and treasures, including healing and protection. They are skilled in enchantment. Number 10. There is a difference between water elementals and other water fairies and spirits, but it is in degree of evolution. We must remember that all water is one, whether in a pot, stream, lake, or sea. Thus, all water spirits are connected. Most water spirits replenish our energy. They have an abundance of energy themselves, and it's usually of a healing nature. This is why going to the seashore has such recuperative power. Different water spirits are found in different locations. Although usually found close to their water source, they are not limited to it. Whenever I visit the ocean, I like to get up early and walk the beach, meditate, commune, and play with the water spirits and sprites, riding on the early morning waves. On one occasion, a number of years back. I was being overly playful. I walked along the edge of the water, and as the waves came in, I quickly danced out of the way. It was my way of playing tag with the water sprites. When the waves didn't catch me, I would laugh and sing out, "Nya, nya, nya." And after the third day of this, I returned to my dwelling to find a necklace missing. This is what happens. Things just walk away, or not. It held a medallion that I had had since childhood. I was sure where I had put it before leaving for the beach, as I always took great care because of its specialness. I turned the house upside down looking for it, with no success. So I went back to the beach, thinking maybe I had worn it there without realizing. I retraced my steps, but again found no necklace. 6 months later, when I was back home, I put on a pair of pants that I had not worn in about a year. As I put my hands in the pockets to straighten them out, I discovered my necklace with a medallion. And then I heard a laugh, a chorus of "Nya, nya, nya." I spun around, but there was no one near me. I understood then that the water sprites were not confined solely to their watery element. They had more freedom than I knew, and they had more power than I knew. This was their way of tagging me back, since I had teased them about not being able to do so at the ocean. Spirits of freshwater areas are usually more delicate in nature and appearance, but we must be careful about making assumptions along this line. For example, the mermaids are the mistresses of the oceans. They protect the sea animals and can bestow gifts upon humans, particularly great medical knowledge. They can also take human form for short periods of time, and they have great beauty. Today, many believe that those sailors who reported seeing mermaids were actually only seeing manatees, i.e. sea cows. Having dived with the manatees, I know this could not be. No matter how long an individual has been at sea, there is no way that he could mistake a manatee for a beautiful mermaid. There is a possibility, though, that the mermaid, upon being spied, may have assumed the form of a manatee or some other sea creature, shape-shifting. There are also mermen. They are usually of great age. These male counterparts also visit the surface, but they rarely interact with humans. The traditional belief is that they have great control over the weather at sea. The Selkies of the Shetland Islands and Iceland were water spirits who took the form of gray seals. At night, they would come ashore and shed their seal skins, walking and dancing in the moonlight as men and women. The female Selkies were very beautiful and desirable. The male Selkies were very amorous. Women who wished to have children would cry 7 tears into the water to draw out a Selkie lover from its depths. After mating, they returned to the oceans. Often, the river women and freshwater spirits and nymphs take the great temperament reflected by the water in which they live. Some water spirits and sprites are considered devious. In Scotland, a kelpie would often take the form of a young horse and lure a person onto its back for a ride. It would then rush into a deep pool to drown the rider. It's twisted. Most water spirits, however, adjust their behavior and manner to the humans they encounter. If treated with courtesy and honesty, they return the same courtesy and honesty. Water sprites and spirits vary in size and form. They can be as tiny as a droplet of water, or they can encompass the entire water source. They usually appear youthful and young, but they do not stay in one form for too long a time. Those freshwater nymphs known as nixies in Germany could also take a beautiful human form, or similar to mermaids, half human, half fish. As humans, they can still be recognized by a sopping wet bit of clothing. There are spirits of pools and wells. These also take human form. They are beautiful, enticing, and seductive, and their touch is known to bring great delight and great sorrow. Duality. This sorrow arises from the longing that occurs when they leave. There is always at least one being who serves as the guardian to the water source. Sometimes a whole group may serve as guardians, and it is not unusual to find groups of water sprites, spirits, and nymphs always together. Remember, all water is connected, and this implies relationship. Those of this realm are rarely solitary beings, and unless they know you and are very comfortable with you, you will rarely encounter them alone. Water has been the most traveled route into the Fey realm. Water links us to the astral dimension where these beings operate more actively, although they are quite capable of moving from that realm to the physical and back again. The borderlands to the various water sources are where encounters with those of this realm is most acceptable. The edges of territories are considered unsafe areas. The points where land meets water are intersections of worlds, doorways by which those of the water realm can enter the physical. Islands, beaches, lake shores, riverbanks, and the edges of wells are magical points where the mortal world intersects with the fairy bay realm. It was considered foolhardy to sleep or rest near brooks and the edges of streams. It was likely that you would fall under the enchantment of the water nymph that inhabited or guarded those waters. Natural ponds, wells, and pools are often open doorways and thus very magical. In the Sumerian tale of Gilgamesh, There is a description of an enchanted pool that lies in the ocean floor itself. Water within water. In this pool grows a flower that is supposed to preserve human life. Pools of water after rain can provide temporary doorways into the Fey realm. There are many magical uses for them. When I was growing up, our yard sported a tree stump that was hollowed down about 6 inches from the top. After a good hard rain, water would accumulate in that hollowed out area. It acted like a magic mirror, reflecting beautiful faces and scenes of the Fey realm. My grandfather was the one to point this out, telling me to go look inside the stump, and never explaining why. Oh, good old grandparents. He would just smile and walk away. Rainwater captured in a dark bowl, cauldron, or even a puddle will do the same thing. By setting a bowl out in the rain or by digging a small rain hole in your yard, you are extending an invitation to those of this realm. Trust me, they need it now more than ever. If this is an alignment for you, all hands on deck. Putting a small hole near, but not directly under a tree, is an effective way of creating a window or doorway. When it fills with rainwater, you have an intersection of 2 worlds. The steps for seeing through the window are simple. 1. Find a position near it where you will be undisturbed and be able to look into the water. 2. Close your eyes, relax, and do a brief 3 to 5 minute meditation to harmonize with nature. Make several passes over your watery doorway with your left hand. This imparts sensitivity to the water and serves as a gesture of invitation. 4. Be patient and concentrate when gazing into the water. Do not stare intensely. Allow your gaze to be soft and half-focused, as if staring blankly, as in daydreaming. 5. Initially, the phenomenon will vary. You may see just a fogginess, like clouds passing by. This is positive. Oh my gosh, I've experienced this. There's a spiraling cloud coming up out of the water a month or so ago, near the river. Here, when you see this, it means the door is open. Eventually, colors, images, faces, and entire scenes will come through. Each time you use this rain pool or bowl, the visions of the Fey realm will increase. Those of this realm will see this pool as a doorway created, especially for them. Tidal pools are extremely magical spots. A tidal pool is water separated from the sea. Because of this, it is a doorway by which water spirits of the Fey realm enter and exit the mortal world. To enter the watery realm of fairies, it is also a window by which we can observe this realm. Shore creatures often share the magic and protection of the water spirits. Sometimes they are signs that water spirits are near. These shore creatures may be turtles, lizards, frogs, seals, otters, cranes, gulls, etc. Sometimes the water nymphs will use a shore creature's form to study humans more closely. and sometimes water nymphs use them to send messages to humans. In Japan, there is a story, sometimes referred to as the crane and the turtle. This is a story of a man by the name of Urashima. This man encounters a group of boys abusing a large sea turtle that had been unable to get back to the sea with the tide. He chases the boys off and helps the turtle get back to the water. Instead of swimming away, the turtle remained, raised its head, and thanked Urashima for his kindness. As a gift, the turtle took Urashima on his back to the place beneath the waters, to the home of the Sea Lord. There, Urashima fell in love with the Sea Lord's daughter. Soon, he longed for his old home and his family. And when he begged to return, he was given a box covered with jewels. He was told by the Sea Lord's daughter that as long as he kept the box and did not open it, she would serve as his guardian on land. The turtle carried him back to the beach. Upon his return, he discovered many centuries had passed in the time he was gone. And so he was alone in the world of humans. He cried and then examined the jeweled box. He decided there was no reason not to open it, not to open it now, and thus he did. As he opened it, a sea mist rose up, revealing a feather. The mist enveloped him, and the feather clung to him. And in an instant, where once stood Urashima, there now stood a beautiful white crane, the bird of longevity. Anything of the water implies connection to fluidness, emotions, and the feminine aspects of life. Through the water spirits, we can open more fully to the water initiation. This means we learn to use our emotional forces more appropriately. Through them, we can learn to develop into intuition and creative imagination. We open ourselves to healing and the development of our psychic natures. All water spirits can teach us about our inner feelings. In learning to connect with them, we can gain many benefits. I will list them. 1. We develop our psychic nature through contact with water spirits. 2. We learn to be more nurturing. 3. They show us how to develop greater resourcefulness. 4. They teach us about healing. 5. They help us overcome fears of confinement. 6. They assist us in developing flexibility. 7. They stimulate our romantic nature. 8. They awaken compassion and sensitivity. 9. They stimulate artistic inspiration. 10. They help us to deal with exaggerated emotions. Ooh, they've helped me so much. 11. They help us develop greater sensuality. 12. They awaken the creative imaginations. Oh, water. Here are some stories. You can Google them if you like. Sun, Moon, and Water, which is Nigerian. This is another title of a story. why crab has no head, or how the first river was made, Ecom. Now we have the fountain of speaking waters, which derived from the United States. Another story, how Coyote brought back people after the flood, Miwok. We have the crane and the turtle, which is Japanese. Jason and the Argonauts, Greek. Odysseus and the Sirens, Greek. Gilgamesh, Nepishtim and the flood, Sumerian. Another story, the tale of the rainbow snake, Australian. Another story, Luti and the mermaid, which is British. And we have the Little Mermaid, which is Danish. Another story, the merman laughed, Icelandic. And the water of life, German. Another story, the singing drum and the mysterious pumpkin, Bantu. Water is the most powerful element. Water can reshape stone. Yeah. Aho.